It's a privilege to introduce our keynote speaker for Commencement, Phil Goldberg. Phil is the author of 19 books which he wrote himself and or co-authored, in addition to the fact that he blogs for the Huffington Post, and he has a few scripts in at Hollywood. He's a meditation teacher, he's a spiritual counselor, he's been actively involved personally in the study of yoga and the wisdom of the Vedic tradition since he was a teenager, not that many years ago. He helped establish Maharishi University. And if you get an opportunity, ask him some of those early stories of what it was like when, now listen for the parallel here, they moved their campus to its current location, a vacant college campus in Iowa, where he and the other founders were sledging through years of accumulated dust and debris. He's a wonderful storyteller, and I just want to read to you one of the first two sentences of the book that he's perhaps best well known for, American Veda. And the full title is From American Veda, From Emerson and the Beatles to Yoga and Meditation, How Indian Spirituality Changed the West. The first two sentences give you an idea that this is not your ordinary book of history. The chapter's titled, Namaste, America. In February 1968, the Beatles went to India for an extended stay with their new guru, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. It may have been the most momentous spiritual retreat since Jesus spent those 40 days in the wilderness.
Thank you, Anandi. And thanks to Nitai and everybody else who's been so gracious to me, and for the honor of speaking here today and thinking that I may have some wisdom to impart to young people. And thank you for not making me wear one of those silly caps people have to wear at commencement exercises. I get to wear a kurta that was given to me in India. It's actually very humbling to be invited to this, and I'm always so happy to be among people from the Ananda community, where I've been treated so well over the years. And I actually had to give some thought to this business of imparting advice, and after all these years, I keep being reminded of how much I don't know. And I guess there's some advice in that. Never forget how much you don't know, and keep learning what you need to know. So I thought about it, and so I'm going to give you some gratuitous advice right off the bat and get it out of the way. And that is, learn to write well. That may sound banal, but and maybe it sounds gratuitous coming from a professional writer, but if you have some historical perspective, there's a certain irony in the fact that we live in this age of YouTube and 500 channels on cable TV and where everybody carries a camera around. It's a visual world, but I don't think there's ever been a time in human history where you're known for the written word as much as we are today. If you blog, if you tweet, if you go on Facebook, if you email, you're using the written word to communicate all the time. Not to mention if you publish articles or books or write scripts. And I can tell you from personal experience that your written words in those contexts, in an age where everybody thinks speed matters more than quality, you will stand out for writing well. So my advice is cultivate that skill. It's in many ways more important now than the spoken word and your appearance and everything else. And write and learn to rewrite and proofread and rewrite again and fine-tune those words, and don't think it's a waste of time, because you'll impress people by writing well when everybody else is writing carelessly and abbreviating and using bad grammar. Okay, we got that out of the way. I want to congratulate the graduates, not just because you're graduating, but because you made the choice of coming here. And I think that's very brave. It's a courageous thing to do, to come to an unusual institution like this. You've taken what we call the road less traveled, and that is not an easy road to take. I say that from personal experience, because when I was your age, the one thing I hated was people who started sentences with "when I was your age." But when I was your age, or actually a little older, slightly, as Ananda said, I was one of the cadre of young Turks who started what was then called Maharishi International University. It was 40 years ago to now. We were finishing the first year of operation and getting ready to move to Iowa from Santa Barbara. And that was a very weird thing to be doing back then. Starting a school like that, going to a school like that. And if you think saying, I go to Ananda College is weird, try Maharishi International University, in 1974. That was even stranger. And so we were considered weirdos, but it was a great adventure and one I cherish and think back fondly of to this day. And of course, the school survived and flourished. And here, 40 years later, they just had probably their 36th or something graduation, and their commencement speaker was none other than Jim Carrey. You get to have me, and that's what happens when you're just starting out. 40 years from now, you will have an internationally world-known actor and comedian. And back then, the world was very different, and not just because there was no internet or smartphones, but because the kind of knowledge that you have all absorbed in your time here and that inspired the creation of Ananda was just entering American mainstream life for the first time. As Ananda said, the story of Vedic teachings coming here goes back over 200 years to the time of Emerson and Thoreau. But it was after that momentous event in 1968 that I began my book with that Ananda read. And by the way, I have to say, I have to digress. Since you read that opening sentence, when I wrote that, I thought, oh man, I'm going to get in trouble. Once again, mentioning the Beatles and Jesus in the same sentence. They got in trouble for that. And I thought, is it true? Was it that important? And am I going to get angry letters? No, I never did. This book's been out 3 years. And no one's ever contradicted that. It was that important. It was a huge moment in history. And that's why I do these events like the one Wednesday where I talk about the Beatles. But things changed. And so by the mid-70s, there were a lot of gurus around. Yogananda's autobiography was being read in every hippie domicile in the country and by many other people. And Vedic teachings were entering the mainstream because scientists were starting to take them seriously. But it was all very new, and it was all very hippy-dippy and counterculture still. And now, it's part of the fabric of American life, and it's very different. In many ways, it's a lot easier to be strange and weird and into this kind of thing now than it was 40 years ago. Back then, if you wanted to be a vegetarian, you had to be prepared to eat a lot of bad grilled cheese sandwiches made from processed cheese and white bread. And if you said you meditated every day, you might as well have said, I start the day by sticking pins in a voodoo doll. And now, your doctors tell you to meditate. And so, and if you were sitting in Central Park on a bench with your eyes closed and your legs crossed, no one would give you a second thought, unlike when I did that in 1970 and a cop asked if I needed help. But still, many people will think you're very weird for going to Ananda College, and you are. You are weird in the best sense of the word, and my advice would be, enjoy it. Relish it, cherish it. You are historically in very good company for being in this, what I call a Maha lineage of people who have integrated East and West into their lives and made it part of everyday experience. This is a planetary phenomenon that is terribly important, and you're part of it. You're in the footsteps of people like Emerson and Thoreau and the Beatles and Joseph Campbell and J.D. Salinger and all these people whose lives were influenced by the great teachings of the Vedas and who in turn imparted them in one form or another to other people. You don't care, and be proud of it, and keep in mind that you have something very precious. Your peers, may have degrees from prestigious universities and resumes that open doors on Wall Street, but you have something most of them don't have, and that they don't even know they're missing. Because you know who you are, you know what you are in the biggest sense, you know why you're here on this planet, you know what it takes to live a truly happy and fulfilled life, and you have the means to live and continue to live a rich inner life, and where you can locate the true source of joy and contentment and love deep in the silence of your soul. That is an incredibly precious gift that most young people don't get. Most old people don't get. Very few people wearing caps and gowns in this season have that knowledge. Very few of their parents and grandparents have it, and many people don't even look for it until late in life, sometimes too late. And so you won't, like a lot of people, be wasting time and energy looking for happiness and love and success in all the wrong places, in money and outer achievement and possessions and goods and status. It's a blessing, and I know it because that same basic wisdom has guided my life ever since I was a very messed up young person in his 20s. I wish it had come sooner. I wish there had been a college like this, or like the one I ended up helping to start when I went to college. And so my advice, for what it's worth, is don't take it for granted. And don't ever stop being grateful for it, and always remember it. You'll be pulled in many different directions, and one of your tasks will be at all times just to remember who you are and and to sort out what does your own well-being, what does your own spiritual progress demand at any given moment. And that's what will best serve you and your spiritual needs. It's not always easy, but it's a whole lot easier if you remember the first verse, and to be a yogi and to stay in tune with the quiet voice inside you that is guiding you at all times. That's the original GPS. That's the cosmic GPS. And it's always with you. You just have to tune into it and listen to it and make sure it's not receiving static or being sabotaged by other voices, and stay true to it. And as you know, there are many forms of Dharma. There's that individual Dharma, the Dharma of an occupation or a calling, the Dharma of a parent, and the Dharma of a child who has a parent. But there's also the Dharma of being a member of a community and a citizen of a nation and an inhabitant of a planet that's in jeopardy. And living in accord with those dharmas, those higher dharmas that call you to higher action beyond your own personal needs, to act on behalf of others and of the world, that aspect of Dharma, if obeyed, will bring you a much more fulfilling life than only following your personal Dharma. Doing both. Living a life that's true to who you are, and at the same time upholding that which serves a greater good and promotes the natural path of higher evolution for all. So I wish each of you a fulfilled life and a satisfied life and an enlightened life. And I hope you fulfill all your personal desires and have a really great time. But I also hope that you aspire to more than that. And my generation was very idealistic, and we accomplished a lot, I think, to make the world a better place. But we didn't even come close to doing what we dreamed was possible. And in many ways, we made a mess of things. Not me. You're a faculty. Those others. And there's a lot left to be done, and then there's a certain sense of urgency to it. And I, on behalf of all the rest of us and the future generations to come, and selfishly thinking maybe, I'll come back as one of your grandchildren, I urge you to be brave and be kind and be true to the highest good and make the world a better place while you're at it. Good luck.